Hello, I'm Graham Horton and welcome to this video. Now this is the brand new Scorp Mini, and this is a video that I really didn't want to make. Let me explain why. Now about 2 months ago, FeiyuTech reached out to most of its YouTube collaborators and asked them would they like to produce a video showing the feature set of this new product, which was going to be launched on Kickstarter. So we played around with this particular gimbal with our cameras and then produced some material that FeiyuTech could actually use on launch day. Now unfortunately for me it didn't work out quite so good. If you notice, most of the videos that are now showing on the Kickstarter page or on YouTube are actually made with the Sony A7 series of cameras. If you look at the compatibility list, you'll find there's very little other cameras that are fully compatible with this mini gimbal. When I say fully compatible, I mean it's able to control the ISO, shutter speed and the aperture from the controls on the back of the gimbal. You have two compatibility modes. One is over the USB-C mode. So here with the Canon camera, I've got it connected from the camera port on the gimbal to the USB-C port on the camera, and from the gimbal I'm able to control aperture, shutter speed and ISO, and I can start and stop recording. So that's fully compatible. For those cameras that haven't got USB connectivity, you can use the standard connector cable. So here I've got the USB-C to 2.5mm, which is used by some of the Fuji cameras and some of the Canon cameras. There's also a cable which will connect between the USB-C and the Panasonic Lumit special cable, which is 2.5mm TRRS. Now unfortunately that cable does not work with this Mini on any of the Panasonic cameras. It works on the G6 Max gimbal, but it will not work on this one. Now I have come up with a fix which is not commercially available. I'm not sure that I'm going to release the details of how it works. I may put it on my photoblog page under the review. But it allows you to use the Canon Connect 2.5mm cable and then launch the Panasonic camera for start and stop video and shoot stills using this adapter that I've manufactured. Let me now talk about the two compatibility modes that I'm calling. One is going to be the payload compatibility. So with the gimbal, it has a payload of 1200 grams. Now you'll find to use 1200 grams the gimbal has to be absolutely finely balanced, otherwise you end up with motor vibration, and in some points the gimbal will flop as the motor can't control the strength. I'm saying about 850 grams or 900 grams is going to be the limit for this gimbal. Now it obviously depends on the type of camera and the lens you've got as to how much extension there is, which will tip it over the center point of balance in some dynamic situations. It's alright when the camera's in this position where everything's in static balance, but when you start to move the gimbal into this sort of position, you're now putting dynamic loads on the arms and they can be unbalanced quite easily. So it's a case of, see, it now has started to move away from its normal position. So the payload is not holding that back. We've got the other compatibility mode, which is whether the gimbal can actually fire the shutter for stills or start and stop recording video. Now the Sony A7 series seems to be fully compatible in as much that you can start and stop video and take stills. Now with the Canon cameras I've been using, which is the EOS M50 Mark II, the Canon EOS M6 Mark II and the Canon G7X Mark III, all of those can work over USB-C, but we have limitations. You might notice that you can only start and stop recording video. You can't do a half press shutter release, so you can't focus when you're in the video mode, for example. So you're relying totally on autofocus to be able to shoot that video. If at some point it wanders off focus, and normally if you're using it by hand, you can half press the shutter button and force the camera to reacquire focus. Unfortunately with the Canon protocol and this gimbal, you can't initiate that half focus press, so we've lost that facility. So it does pay to look at the camera compatibility list on the FeiyuTech website and have a look at the small print as to see which of the features are not available with your particular camera. Now that compatibility list only shows 3 or 4 cameras that are compatible from the Panasonic range, and they include the GH4, GH5, GH6 and something like the G9. Now it is possible to use cameras like the Panasonic Lumix FZ300, 330, providing you use the what's called liberator plate, which allows you to get the camera axis on the tripod axis. It's a little extension plate with a 1/4 screw, which allows you to screw this to the base of the camera, and then you've got a 1/4 which is on the center line of the camera. That was released by Aldo following a design that I published a long time ago. But it relies on you pressing the start and stop button for video, or pressing the shutter button if you're shooting video. If you had my design for the Canon to Panasonic adapter, then it will start and stop recording video, and it will shoot still. So until we get an update to the firmware for this gimbal, it means that we can't use the Panasonic Lumix 2.5mm cable to fire the cameras using that remote wired socket. Now, in compatibility terms, even if you don't have the wired compatibility to start and stop recording video or shooting stills, providing the camera can balance, then you can still use the record button on the camera to start and stop your video recording, or pressing the shutter button to take stills. So for example, I've got the little Pentax SR7 fitted on the top of that gimbal, and I just press the start and stop video recording to capture images on there. And it's the same with any of the point and shoots. Something like the Canon SX70 you can use on the gimbal, and just press the record button to start your recording video. But normally the mirrorless cameras such as the Fuji X-T3 will use the 2.5mm connection cable, or the Olympus again will use that 2.5mm connection cable to start and stop recording or taking stills. So you've got those compatibility terms there. Now again, with the Kickstarter page, if you look at the advertisements for this model, you'll see it shows face tracking, object tracking and video tracking. But be aware, for face tracking you do need to purchase that additional accessory which plugs into the UART port, and that acts as a signal to the gimbal as to where to follow focus. So you do need that extra accessory to do face tracking. Again, with object tracking you will need to enable that with that particular accessory. Video tracking is one of the nicest features of this particular gimbal. You've probably seen it in some of the other demonstration videos, where you can actually set waypoints, and then the gimbal will move to those at your predetermined speed and predetermined time. So that is one of the most outstanding features that I found of this gimbal, and is one that I'll be using quite a bit. So that's the video tracking. All the other modes like panorama, hyperlapse panorama, all those sort of things are standard editions and work quite well. Talking about balancing, these knobs are not the easiest in the world to balance a camera. Quite a few reviewers have pointed out that these locking knobs are not really fine enough for the precision balance that you need on this gimbal. And the one that really is difficult is the one which adjusts the arca plate. You can get it in position, think you've locked it, but then it slides away and you have to rebalance it. So that arca plate lock is not the best in the world for getting fine balance. And again, the automatic tuning facility within the gimbal to set the motor strength just tend to overstress the motors. It puts too much power on them, and you can get into some situations and you'll end up with the gimbal vibrating. In that sort of situation, it's better to find out which axis is giving that vibration, and then fine tune that manually to change the motor strength until the vibrations stop. But the gimbal is a lovely addition to my arsenal of tools. Especially like this facility where you can use the magic wheel at the front to either do a pan, press the change button at the side, now you can use it for roll, press the button again, and then you can use it for tilt. So you've got plenty of options there for manual control of the gimbal. And with the associated Scorp app, again you can remotely control the camera from that app, change its position, change focus if you've got the Sony camera. It's a nice addition. Even if the user interface isn't that intuitive, it is a good app to use. Now the other thing I haven't pointed out of this gimbal is the little OLED display. It's great indoors, you can see everything perfectly, but as with all these OLED displays, take them out into even moderate sunshine and you will not be able to see the OLED display. I find it damn near impossible to use outdoors. I've tried shielding the display and looking at it. It's not very useful for outdoors. Being OLED, it's probably hard to drive that even harder to give you a brighter look. So maybe that's something that needs to be addressed with future issues of these gimbals. So I did feel as though I had to produce this video, as most of the videos are being shot using the A7 camera, which gives the impression that the gimbal can actually do more than it actually can with other brands of cameras. So it really does point to the fact you need to look at the camera compatibility list to find out what options will not be available with this gimbal if you purchase it from that Kickstarter page. Hopefully they will update the software. I was working for several weeks with the technical department, especially a chap there called Ryan. We've had several interchanges over some of the design features of the gimbal, some of the problems that have been highlighted but not picked up by other reviewers. So hopefully there's going to be some software updates for this gimbal which will allow the full feature set to operate. Now I'm not going to go out with this gimbal and show you fantastic footage of me walking and getting nice smooth videos of following people on skateboards. You've seen that in all the other videos that have been showcased on the Kickstarter page, and some fantastic videos there. I really just wanted to put a balance to that and say have a look at the specifications and have a look at the camera compatibility list to make sure that what you get is what you need for your particular shooting needs. So that's it for the video. Hope you found it useful. Thanks for watching. Please do take care, and I hope to see you all very, very soon. Goodbye for now.